Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, The New Age of Digital Advertising and the Power of Conversion APIs. So I'm joined by Aaron Foxworthy, and we're going to talk through how you all can enrich conversion signals with your first-party data, sending them down to your downstream ad platforms, places like Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, and more, to go and optimize all of your advertising campaigns. We'll talk through as well how Snowflake and Hightouch specifically fit into this picture. And the impact that it can drive for your marketing teams. So first off, let's do a little bit of intro. Aaron, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Aaron Foxworthy. I'm an industry principal at Snowflake, working specifically on the buy side. So a lot of agencies and a lot of advertisers. So nice to meet everybody.
And then I'm Alec Hazy. I am our MarTech and product marketing lead here at Hightouch. I was a longtime customer of Hightouch before this as a director of data products at Red Ventures. Fun fact, this is the specific use case that landed me on Hightouch and got me so bought into the product. So I'm super excited to talk today with Aaron and teach you all about this use case. So quick agenda before we go ahead and get started. We'll do some intros to Hightouch and Snowflake. We'll talk through what conversion APIs are, why they matter, how to actually go and manage them at scale, again, with Snowflake and Hightouch. Some use cases of how you can actually go and push the limits of CAPI. And then we'll do a little bit of a demo along with some Q&A at the end. So bear with us. First question, though, Aaron, just to get us started with a little bit of trivia.
Let's do it.
What year was the Pixel for Facebook released?
Oh gosh, Pixel. Okay, I'm dating myself when I was on the agency side a very long time ago. I'm going to say 2009.
Oof, you're close. A little early.
Okay.
I don't know how accurate this is, but as per the Facebook doc I found, it says circa 2012. So maybe early customers got it. I don't know. All right.
Maybe.
Well, then what about the conversion API? So as Facebook, and we'll talk about this as we go today, as they've seen a need to move away from the Pixel to the conversion API, at what point did this new paradigm and new endpoint get released?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like that was more like, 2019? That's my guess.
Ooh, on the money. I love it. I love it. Didn't even give her the answers before this, I promise. All right. Let's go ahead and dive in. Aaron, you want to tell everyone a little bit about Snowflake?
Yeah, I'd love to. Hi, everyone. So this is really interesting. There's a lot of people maybe on this call who are unfamiliar with Snowflake. So I want to do just a little bit of history, kind of who we are, because we have a really interesting founder story that I love. So Snowflake was founded in 2012 by two French Oracle engineers. So they saw the future of the cloud. They wanted to build something faster than their company was going. And so they got a little bit of VC money, quit their jobs, locked themselves in a San Mateo apartment, and built a native cloud architecture. So the key to architecture at the time on why you saw such fast growth is that they separated something called storage and compute. So just think about that, meaning that it was highly performant, it doesn't run a lot of contention, and you can scale data really, really quickly. So in 2019, as the cloud data warehouse starts to take off, we start to release workloads. And those workloads could say, build your applications, bring your ML and AI. Really important part, which we'll talk about today a lot, is also collaboration. So how do you actually collaborate within the ecosystem? And we have really very specific ways that we do that within Snowflake that's different from the industry. That's allowing us to create something we call the Media Data Cloud. So as more and more companies, as this global platform start to bring data into Snowflake, we have over 8,000 now, you're starting to see this really large collaboration. Specifically in the media and entertainment industry, we see a lot of growth. And so we'll go to the next slide. So this is where you're starting to see in our industry, where you have media and entertainment companies, data providers, agencies, and ad tech and martech companies, all starting to provide data inside the ecosystem. Some examples of these. So an agency can be sharing data back to their marketing company. An ad tech company could be providing ad logs, right? A media company could be building a clean room, which we talked a lot in the past. Data providers, right? Providing data within our marketplace. All of these, companies who are building inside of Snowflake Media Data Cloud are really creating this large, amazing ecosystem. So on the next slide, some of the large logos, we get really excited and add a lot of these every day into some of these big companies, that are doing this. So you can see some of our major agency partners, some of the ad tech ecosystem, a lot of SSPs and DSPs, really large presence in some of the largest publishers in the world from a linear and CTV perspective, and then obviously a lot of identity providers and other really rich data providers providing data inside of our marketplace. But today, what's really important to think about, on the next slide, Alec, is what does this mean for a marketer or an agency, right? So if you take this really performant platform, right, with these various workloads, one single source of view of your data, right, bringing everything that you have, a marketing organization is exceptionally complex, right? You're bringing data from all kinds of signals, paid, owned, ads, right, all kinds of it, all of that ingested, cleaned, one view of that data. Now you're bringing potentially machine learning. Now you're bringing enrichment right through a marketplace. And then the key to what we're going to talk about today, huge partner for us on this, is Hightouch, how you're activating that data. That's becoming more complicated, which we're going to talk about today. But again, one of the key parts to the success of a marketing and agency organization is really making sure your data is it's unsiloed, right? And it's sitting in a place that can perform and bring you the data that you need, right, to be an advanced marketer.
Yep. And that brings me to Hightouch. So a little bit of background on Hightouch. Hightouch is a data activation platform. So we help teams to activate data directly out of data cloud like Snowflake down into your downstream tools, whether it's Salesforce, Google Ads, Facebook, right? So we talked about all the customer data that's being stored inside of Snowflake, maybe machine learning models being stored inside. We want to take that beyond analytics and help put that to use. And platforms like Salesforce or like Iterable or Google or Facebook need that data inside of their tools to go and actually operationalize your use cases. So Hightouch is the bridge between those. So our team came from the CDP space and first released a capability coined reverse ETL, which allows you with a SQL first UI to go in, define SQL queries, and simply map how you want the data to be mapped from Snowflake to your downstream tools before actually setting up your sync and sending it down. You can kind of see that in the GIF on the screen, something like a simple SQL query there where you're sending it down into your Salesforce, for example. We've since evolved to really solve for more of the CDP type of use case, just centering on the data cloud and giving marketers a customer studio, a no-code UI to go and build and activate audiences and experiments directly from Snowflake with, again, this suite of no-code features. We've released a lot more features recently out of Hightouch, things to help with the data readiness problem. So modeling data, getting everything ready and prepared to go and activate. For this specific webinar, we're going to focus on this activation use case and specifically really this reverse ETL UI where you can come in and define SQL queries to go and send data out of Snowflake down into downstream tools like Facebook, Google Ads, and more. All right. So let's hop over now to a little bit of a foundational understanding of conversion APIs. And I think before to do that, we really have to talk about why data is important to these ad platforms like Facebook. So as many of you know, and as many of you have heard the word AI being pushed around everywhere on the internet, this is an essential piece of ad platforms today. It's doing anything from attribution down to measurement and reporting, ad optimization. It's just taking all the valuable data that these walled gardens have and really putting it to use to make sure that advertisers are able to spend more money, but actually get good returns for that ad spend. So this is not just a buzzword here. It is literally the foundation of these walled gardens today and an essential piece to understand when you go to operate any type of advertising campaigns at scale. So when you think about the pieces that kind of are input into the AI ad engine behind platforms like Meta, there's a couple different components. The first one being Meta profiles, right? We've all, I'm sure, created some type of social media profile somewhere. Many have probably deleted it since, but there are thousands or millions and millions and millions of Meta profiles out there that Meta is actually able to go and use and pull the data from, understanding your age, your demographics, things that you've liked or things you've scrolled past on your timelines that really feed that ad engine. But you as an advertiser control three primary inputs. The first being your ad creative. What do I actually want to show, right? So do I want to show a dog in my ad? Do I want to show a modern looking ad? Testing different ad creatives is definitely an important part of that. First party audiences. So telling Meta specifically, hey, here are my customers. I want to target them, or I want to build lookalikes off of them, or I want to suppress them. That's another huge input. And lastly, and what we'll focus on more today is conversion events. So giving Meta, or any of these different advertising platforms, the actual conversion loop to understand what's happening downstream off of their platform. So when someone comes back to your site, have they viewed a page? Have they made a purchase? Any of these other conversions that traditionally these ad platforms just wouldn't have insight into that really complete the whole loop of data that it needs to go and operate. Aaron, anything I missed out on here?
No, I'm excited. I think the conversion events is really the new piece to a lot of this audience. So I'm excited to dig into it today.
Yeah, definitely the nitty and gritty of these three, and probably the hardest to wrap your head around. So, want to make sure we take the time today and make sure everyone understands these. So, bear with me if this is a little bit too high level for some of you, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page of what we're talking about when we talk about conversion events. And really, what they are is customer actions just taken across the purchase journey, right? So, taking someone from awareness down into purchase, what are all the different things that happen along the way? So, for someone like a B2C, maybe it's a PetSmart, you would have things like a page view. Maybe someone's coming to site for the first time. Then they maybe create an account, which shows you that they have a lot more interest. Maybe they've added to cart or initiated a checkout and have eventually then led to a purchase of maybe a dog toy, right? So each of these signals is a different signal of intent that you need to send to these platforms so that the AI can actually go and operate and understand what's working, what's not. On the B2B side, very similar, a little bit of a different funnel, obviously. So you might have things from a Snowflake side or Hightouch side of content downloads, webinar signups. So today, you all signing up for the webinar, Debo submits, or an account finally created. So really, just a high level view of all the different customer actions that you can take across the purchase journey. So, why do paid media platforms care? And what is this AI actually doing? We hit on it a little bit before, but just to dive in a little bit more, there's four main things that these platforms use the conversion events for. The first one is performance reporting and attribution, right? So for Facebook, they're Meta. Sorry, I'm going to keep switching through those along the way in the webinar today. But for Facebook to actually give you a reporting number of X purchase events or X revenue driven from an actual campaign, you have to give it the conversion signals from your site, right? Or maybe your offline conversions. So it needs to have those signals to understand how performance is trending and maybe do some type of attribution on their side as well. To know, hey, this campaign, this person saw this campaign, maybe they then converted. Training ML models to optimize spend. This is by far my favorite topic that we can possibly cover when we talk about data activation and ad spend. So here it is absolutely essential for you to get these signals to these platforms so that the ML models and all the AI capabilities that it has can go and actually optimize your campaigns towards specific users or specific intent signals to actually get you better return on your campaigns. The third one, audience building. So your conversion events can then help you build better audiences, right? So maybe you want to do a retargeting on people who have seen a certain product or a certain page view. And then lastly, dynamic ads. So Facebook and other platforms have this capability where they can basically generate ads on the fly based off a catalog that you give to it. And it'll use your conversion signals to understand, do I want to show a red car or a blue car based on if I've interacted at any level on the site. So all of these things come together to really put the foundation in place needed for these paid media platforms to operate with reporting, optimization, targeting, and then ad generation as well. So one thing to keep in mind here, it is absolutely essential for the platforms that allow it to send 100% of your available conversions. So platforms like Meta, they need 100% of your conversions so that they have more data to go and operate with. The AI that they talk about is not just buzzwords. It is immensely, immensely powerful. And the more data that you can feed to it, the better it will actually then perform. Aaron, anything I missed out on here?
No, you nailed it. I mean, I think that for a long time, Meta has been training us. Like we have a learning phase. We need the data, right? We're training our models. When you think about things like, conversion lift, right? From a measurement perspective, like making sure that that has the right data, or to what you said before is retargeting, right? So powerful when you're building frequency to an audience. And so just making sure the platform has those signals, right, is really going to be key to those continue to perform well for social buyers.
Exactly. And every time you launch a campaign, to your point on learning mode or learning phase, for those who don't know, every time you launch a campaign in a platform like Facebook, it needs time for the actual AI to understand who to target, how to optimize your spend. So each campaign will actually go through that learning mode where up until you have a time of 50 conversions, it's going to be trying all different things, targeting different people with different ads and different placements. And then once it actually is able to exit learning mode, it said, okay, the AI knows what it's doing now. Now we can go and spend at scale. So for those of you who haven't heard that or were a little unfamiliar, that's what we're talking about there. But again, conversion is such an important part of that. All right. So this conversion concept has always really been a thing, always in quotes there, really since circa 2012 when the Facebook Pixel first came out, going back to our first trivia question. really what Facebook had in the very beginning, and we'll talk mostly to Facebook here as they were one of the leaders. But this relates to many, many platforms. Was this client side pixel. So it sat directly on the browser. So you could place it with something like a GTM, and it would basically just send these signals directly through the browser to Facebook. So things like a page view, things like a certain click or a purchase. It was giving Facebook this feedback with a really easy to implement pixel that just sat right on the user's browser. Now, little pros and cons here. Pros, it's pretty easy to implement, but con being that it's a lot less reliable and less flexible. So we all have heard the pixel deprecation, cookie deprecation story. As we head further and further into this new age of a privacy first internet, pixels will become less and less reliant. Any type of client side tracking will become less reliant. And Facebook saw this, and Facebook knew that to get these signals to their platforms and to really power the whole underlying architecture of their ad serving platform, they had to pivot and they had to create something a little bit more secure that wouldn't get as blocked as often as pixels. So circa 2019, as Aaron correctly guessed before, we came out with the Facebook Conversion API. So cons at the beginning, a little bit harder to implement. You have to have a server-side integration, which typically takes some engineering effort. But the pro being that it's more reliable and it's a lot more flexible. So when you're sending from a server side, the pixel, there's no pixel to worry about getting blocked. It's all coming from your servers going right into Facebook, and you have full control over the data of which you want to send. So if you want to worry about things like consent or certain events or certain user identifiers, you have full control over doing that from your own server side. Aaron, anything I missed here on the timeline?
No, you're nailing it. But I do have a question because we talked about this a little bit
Yes.
earlier, and I'm fascinated. Can you run a conversion API without the pixel, or are they now something you have to have both? So, like, talk to us
Yes.
about, do you need them? What's happening there? Because I've heard mixed things.
This is a great question. So today, the recommended process by Facebook is to actually run both. So you would be running a Facebook pixel and the Facebook conversion API, and they will then dedupe your events.
Mm.
That said, I'm going to put a very large asterisk on that. Given that the pixel is becoming less and less reliant, we're all shifting to this world of conversion APIs. And given how accurate they are, I personally do see a world where you don't need a Facebook pixel and you can just run conversion API. So my old company, what we did was we ripped off the pixels and we just went with CAPI. We ran both side by side, but weighing pros and cons, we decided to just go with the CAPI integration and not even worry about any type of client side pixels. Though it is best practice as per the Facebook docs to run both. It gives them a lot more signal for now while pixels are still operational. And again, operational with an asterisk. All right. So why do CAPIs matter? So it's actually fairly difficult to test this. My old company, we did a bunch, but looking around on the internet, you might not find a ton of different case studies around this. But Facebook came out with Deloitte, a new and honestly awesome resource that we can share in a follow-up email where they came up with a couple different case studies. So one of the things that they saw was that advertisers setting up CAPI with Pixel experienced a 13% decrease in cost per result, which is huge, right? When we're talking about hundreds of $1 millions of spend, 13% decrease in CP cost per result, it's massive. So you can really see why this matters and the impact that it can have. Now, one thing here, I just want to call out these quotes on the right-hand side. I cannot agree with them more. Again, at my last role, we got a little bit of a hands-on experience with some Facebook folks who walked us through the most important factors of setting up an account and making sure that your infrastructure is in a good spot. And data was the number one thing. And the quote here speaks to it, where the conversion API is the foundation of which everything is built on for performance on Meta. And if you haven't set it up, make this your number one priority. There's not an alternative, right? Like, you have to get conversion signals to Facebook. And if the pixel is going away, again, asterisks, you have to shift to this world of conversion APIs.
I feel like for a lot of media buyers, this is so fundamentally different. Not in a way just because throw the pixel down, worry about your first party coming in, worry about your ad group setup, worry about all your targeting. But to your point, that measurement and the understanding the AI to get to the right conversion, it doesn't have the data. It doesn't matter kind of what you're doing so much on the front end, right?
Exactly. Like, I think this is the hard part about the buzzwordiness of AI and ML recently is like people hear it and they kind of just breeze over it. Like, Facebook and Meta, they have invested an unbelievable amount of money to build the systems that go behind the billions of dollars of ad spend. Like this AI is so immensely powerful and such a critical piece of the advertising platform that they've built. Like you just have to get this right
Mm-hmm.
because with AI, with ML, the better the data that you give to it, the better the outcome it will be.
Yeah.
So you could have the best creative in the world, and if you're not giving it good feedback loops, you're not going to see success, right? And I think one of the things we want to talk about here today is it's not that hard to get this set up, right? So really important piece when we talk about the conversion API and why it's so important, event enrichment. So what we're talking about here when we say event enrichment is adding additional user identifiers to your different conversion signals to give the downstream platforms like Facebook a better chance to actually matching to a user. So like, let's talk through a use case here. Let's say Aaron signed up for this webinar. I, as Hightouch, want to send that conversion event to Facebook because I ran an ad campaign. If I just tell Facebook that Aaron at snowflake.com signed up with this webinar sign up event, that's not going to match in Facebook, right? Facebook's going to try to match to Aaron at Snowflake. And I'm going to go ahead and assume, Aaron, that when you created your first Facebook account, you didn't create it with your Snowflake email
No,
address.
sorry, it wasn't.
So in that case, I need to send it other identifiers, right? And whether it's for a non-logged in user who you just have an IP and a user agent, or it's for a B2B use case where I just have a B2B email that won't match, like it is essential that you add as many identifiers as you possibly can, that your company is confident in you being able to send to Facebook securely to each of these different events, right? So you can see here on the left-hand side, there's something called event match quality, so EMQ. Facebook's going to give you a directional understanding of how good your events are at matching to actual user profiles. So an 8.8 here, that's a great score. Don't be worried, you don't need to get it to a 10. Directionally, that's a great score because in that case, you're sending email, IP, user agent, phone number, and browser ID, in that case, FBP. But you can see all on the right-hand side under customer information parameters, all the different identifiers that Facebook can use to actually go and match to user profiles, right? So when we talk about like importance here, Facebook actually gives guidance, email being first, IP user agent being second, phone number being third, login ID fourth, any other customer identifiers like city, state, then followed by things like browser ID, click ID, lead IDs, and other IDs like that. There's
Yeah.
full guidance on Facebook and all the different platforms for it. But the
One of the,
TLDR,
yeah.
add as much as you can.
Yes. And on that note, one of the things to call out, if you don't have some of those signals, that's where a lot of times our marketplace will help, right? Our data providers are there to help you with these signals. Obviously, having consent management, right, for that to understand what you consent from a privacy team, right? That's where having your data inside of Snowflake helps because we'll help you enrich a lot of these signals that you're sending to the platforms.
Exactly. And honestly, the first party data strategy, right? Like if I'm a publisher and I now spin up a newsletter, well, I'm going to be capturing email address. My team has my email address inside of Snowflake. Okay, now I need to pull that in and send that with this conversion API, right? So the more and more first party data that you're collecting, in addition to anything like a Snowflake marketplace, the better because you can kind of take it incrementally and move up your EMQ as you go. Cool. Let's move. Oh, I think one thing actually to call out here from an anonymous user perspective, we're not just talking about logged in users, right? There are things that you can pull out from anonymous sessions. First, like the most important thing is that you try to get something like an email address, right? Or a first name or a last name. But if you can't, you can still pull things like IP address and user agent, right? Things like anonymous IDs. Like there's more that you can pull off. So it's important for not only just anonymous users or not only just known users, but anonymous users as well. Cool. Okay. Whoops. Went back. All right. So I pulled this in. This was the last second edition of the webinar. Aaron and I were jamming on this a little bit before, and we wanted to talk about it. So I think the one thing that's really, really important, and again, this came up on LinkedIn today, so big asterisks on this one. As more and more changes happen in the broader landscape, so things like an iOS 17 link tracking protection update, you're going to see more and more parameters being removed from URLs, right? Less things that you can actually go and track. So in this case, again, asterisks here in this test from this person, they saw that a Google Click ID and the Facebook Click ID were being removed from URLs for you to actually go and track. And those are essential pieces that historically teams have used to go and run attribution, right? Like Facebook, if you send a conversion signal with a Click ID, it can very easily attribute that click to that ad impression, right? So as these are getting removed, it's becoming more and more important for you to send first party data so that Facebook and all the other platforms can go and run attribution on that.
I'm curious on number one too. What happens with the UTMs? So it's going to be an interesting time.
Exactly. And again, it's always changing. Every browser is going to have some differences here, and it is a rapidly evolving landscape. So we just have to stay on top of it. A little bit more pulled out from that Deloitte report. One of the things that they saw by increasing EMQ score from 5 to 7 actually resulted in a 13% share of incremental purchase event and 82% share of incremental subscribe events. We're not talking about small changes here, right? Small performance lifts. Like these are very, very impactful performance lifts that at scale can change the way a business thinks about their advertising strategy. So absolutely massive to get conversion API spun up, and almost as important to get your EMQ score up, even from a 5 to a 7. That 7 to 8.8 range, that's great. And anything above that, you're just set. So
Do you
good
have any
job,
idea,
10.
Alec, on how you go from a 5 to a 7? Like what
Yeah,
are the
yes. So it's again, it's all directional. But if you look here, like in this case, let's say that 50% of your page view events had an email, right? Because 50% of users were logged in, your EMQ would go down, right? I don't know how far down. So it's a case by case basis, and it's all the different factors being calculated in here. But what you want to do is add as many identifiers as you can and get them on as many events percentage wise as you also can.
Got it.
So again, this isn't a hard score. This is directional. So
Mm-hmm.
take it with a grain of salt, but it's a better understanding of how good of a chance are you giving Facebook to go and match to users.
Got it.
And like you saw there, like just adding one field like an email, I mean, that's enormous, right? Okay, so pain points. Why is this hard? I personally learned this again at my last job. We were running ad campaigns for 6 different customers, clients of my old company, and running about 15 different ad platforms for each, right? So not only were we running different campaigns across all those channels, we were building different pipelines with every single one of them, right? So each one of these are coming out with their own version of conversion APIs, which when you talk about one channel, maybe it's really easy to just run an integration with just Meta, right? For one customer. Well, what happens when you add 10, right? And what happens when those 10 are always changing, like we saw in that last screenshot from the LinkedIn conversation of someone's now made a change to the API endpoint. You have to go and update that, right? And it is absolutely miserable trying to deal with this at any type of scale. So there are some companies out there, and I will definitely say this, who are just running one of these, and they may be totally happy with doing so themselves, building their own pipelines, and that's fine. But anytime that you go beyond just one, or you want to iterate with one, it just becomes an absolute pain to manage yourself, which is why where you'll see our proposed solution comes into play.
Yeah, the only comment on this too, it's when you see how fast some of these social platforms have risen, right? How fast TikTok grows, all of a sudden threads out, like the idea that you have to manage these as fast as they come and then understand like the differences in those CAPIs, the types of creative that's running the A. I mean, it's just, for a social team to manage this alone, right, is so difficult, right? So it's exciting to talk about where you guys are trying to help streamline.
Exactly. And only more and more platforms are going to come out, right? So although X is a relatively new logo here, it was Twitter in the past, but there are only more and more of these platforms where TikTok was barely a conversation when Pixels came out, right? Who knows what that world's going to look like? All right. So let's move down and then talk about Snowflake and Hightouch and where we come into play. So as Aaron talked about before, Snowflake is kind of your central store for all of your data within an organization, right? So you're working to take all of your data from your customer data, your advertising platforms, any type of point of sale events, like offline events, and getting everything into one spot before Hightouch is then coming into play to go and activate that down. So what does this actually look like when we talk about conversion APIs? It's that same concept of get your data to Snowflake in the data cloud and activate it out with Hightouch. And when we're saying activate out, we're saying from Snowflake to those downstream conversion APIs. So inside the data cloud, you very likely have a user table, right? Where you have your different customer identifiers, as many as your business collects, along with your conversion events. Maybe it's purchase events, maybe it's offline events. And then in addition to that, and what we're seeing more and more of is your data science models, right? So as your team is investing in data science and AI, you probably have things like propensity scores being stored in Snowflake as well that can, again, be used to send down into these downstream platforms. So it's this really architecture of putting Snowflake at the center of your business, getting all your data there, and then activating out with Hightouch. So what does this actually look like in Hightouch? So when I talked about before was our reverse ETL capability. It's being able to go in and with a very simple SQL query, being able to just define what we call a data model. So in this case, I'm simply saying, give me all the rows from my events table and join that to my user table, right? And like only look at purchase events. It can be this easy. Like we have seen customers where it is truly this easy to go and stand up a conversion API model. The second step is then to actually go and set up your field mappings. So maybe inside of Snowflake, I had things like IP address, an email, a user agent, a state, a zip code, right? When I go to send that to Facebook, I need to tell Facebook what those fields are. So I would set up what's called a sync, where I actually go in and define my field mappings like you saw here. So I'm just saying, hey, this should map to this between Snowflake and Facebook. When I go to do Google, I should do the same thing and just set up those different mappings. You can build templates as well in the future, so it makes it really easy. And the last step is really setting up your schedule and go. So you can say, hey, run this every 30 seconds, run this every 1 minute, 15 minutes, one day, whatever you need to do to set that schedule. You have the control to really own how frequently we're going to send those syncs out from Snowflake into your downstream tool. It's a pretty simple concept here of just define the data you want, set up the mappings to the downstream tools, and set your schedule. Now, what does this actually look like in a downstream platform like Meta? You can see the payload here that we simply just copied out of the debugger. In this green highlighted section, you're going to see all the identifiers that we're choosing to send, right? So in this last screen, you saw how I was mapping these different fields. In this case, we're sending, on this specific one, we didn't have an FBC, but hey, you know what? We had a user agent, we had street, first name, country, zip, IP address, et cetera. We have all these other identifiers that Facebook can now use to go and match different users, right? In addition to that, you get flexibility to do things like add any context. So in this case, maybe on this purchase event, I wanted to also send the value or the content type and the currency and the content IDs, right? I get flexibility to go and define that in my setup in Hightouch as well. Additional here is that you can test events, which I think is a very underrated capability that you get by using reverse ETL for this, and that you can very easily say like event name purchase underscore test underscore date, which allows you to go and actually iterate really fast and test different events with different enrichments and models. Otherwise, a pain, and you will spend some time and headaches from it. Cool. Well, that is essentially what it looks like. And we'll do a little bit of a demo at the end so you can see it. But conceptually, you're just saying what model you want Snowflake to take, how you want to map it, and then setting it down into the downstream tools so it looks like this enriched event. Awesome. All right. Now, one really big thing that we want to talk through is synthetic conversions. So foundationally, we've got the concepts down. You want to enrich your conversion events with first-party data, and you want to send that into the downstream tools, right? Like get that right. That is step one. Step two, though, is actually thinking about what you want to send, right? So first, yes, send purchase, send add to cart, send view page, right? That said, as your team is starting to create things like propensity models and engagement scores, and maybe they're doing some type of like journey stage modeling, you can actually send those non-event-based conversions from your data to actually go and provide that deeper signal to paid platforms. So when we talk about synthetic conversions, it's this concept of a non-event-based conversion, something like, hey, purchase propensity has reached a score threshold of 25, right? Now I want to send that to Facebook and have Facebook optimize off of that. So where that's like really, really impactful, when you think about things like long-tailed conversions, so in the financial services industry where you have like credit cards that approvals can come back after 2 months, that 7-day attribution window given by Facebook doesn't really do anything for you when it comes to like that actual final approval of a credit card. So if you actually want to use that down funnel conversion, you have to do something here where you can do things like a purchase propensity or a conversion propensity. And within that 7-day attribution window that you have, send that in instead of that final conversion that would otherwise fall outside of your attribution window. So that's a really long-winded explanation to say Facebook only gives you 7 days. And if your conversions happen outside of that, you can use data science to send in events before that and really use that as your optimization point.
I think that's huge for so many. If you just think of all the different categories, right? From a travel perspective, which is, or automotive, like there's so many events that happen past that 7 day, right? This really gives agencies and marketers the ability to look and see, right, does I actually get that purchase in that time frame from a propensity model that's telling me it's going to happen like downstream. It's awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And even like when we talk about how easy it is to use, like that upper right corner, that's the same exact model that I showed you before. I just joined on the predictions table, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it is that simple. If your data is in Snowflake, you just simply add it to your model and now you use that purchase propensity, right? So going back to this example payload, hey, maybe you know what? Maybe I don't know what my purchase value is because I have to wait for some type of approval from a partner or something. I can put in my value point, which is a massive, massive point for the AI to use to actually go and optimize campaigns. I can use a value that my data science team has created, right? That's in Snowflake. I'm just simply pulling it into this event. Or in the case of that credit card example, you can just fire in a full new event that might have otherwise not happened. So it's this concept of now being able to really flexibly have a tool that allows you to pull in your data science along with all your existing first party data and your events. Cool. So what does this actually mean? So what does this mean for the actual end users and what value do they get? So one of the things that is probably my favorite meme or GIF, whatever it's called on the internet. Uh, it's that marketers get the tools that they need to independently manage paid media integrations, which otherwise they'd be waiting on their data teams for, right? And there's some organizations where data teams might want to use this themselves and say, hey, we're going to own this end to end. Hightouch is the tool that we're going to use. There's also others where marketers are going and setting this up themselves. At Snowflake Summit, I got to present with a Chime team. And while we were presenting, they were talking about how their marketing team actually went in and spun all this up themselves, right? It was a data project, but what they realized was, hey, I just need to use the same models that we use for Facebook and set up my mappings for Snapchat. And now I can get it set up for Snapchat. So it really gives them the ability to go and expedite their launch times for launching a new channel, right? Or launching a new event. It allows you to test a lot faster. So they could say, hey, we want to optimize towards maybe a purchase propensity instead of an actual purchase event. It just gives you flexibility to run as a marketer or just make the lives easier of your data teams.
Yeah. I just think it's so important because a lot of times the business users are the ones that know the inside stuff. These are complex, big platforms that we've been working in years, right? And so you're the ones understanding the creative, you're the ones setting up the ad groups, the RNFs, like all of the data that's going in, right? For you to have to wait and be relying on a team to send you the signals to measure that is such a disconnect, right? So it's exciting to think about, right? You need the data because you're the one that knows the insides out of this ecosystem of the platform, right? So I think it's huge, yeah, for business users.
100%. And then the last one that we talked about was just better, more enriched signals being shared, right? Snowflake has all the data that you need. You may as well use your first party data, your data science models to go and boost your match rates to optimize your spend. And then lastly, not something we've talked about a ton, but very important is it's giving you full control over the data that you send, right? So let's say that your privacy team isn't super comfortable with you sending a hashed phone number to Facebook. That's okay. And they say like, hey, go and remove this tomorrow, you can just pull that field down and you're good to go, right? So it's giving you full control over what data you're actually sending and what you're collecting on those users.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. We have a lot of customers that don't want to put a pixel because there's sensitive data on the page and they're just privacy compliant. So now they can still send that data, but they don't have to worry about the pixel being there. So I think it's going to open a lot of use cases to data that just frankly wasn't going to, be used before.
Exactly. 100%. Cool. Well, that is everything we have. We'll do a little bit of a Q&A first, and then if everyone wants to stick around, I will pull up a quick demo and show you what this looks like end to end. But let's just take a look and see what some questions are that we have. What is the typical implementation time? So this is a good one. So it kind of, I don't want to say it depends, but it really depends on where your organization is, right? If you have your data in Snowflake, then setting up Hightouch through the Snowflake marketplace or just spinning it up yourself takes probably 5 minutes, right? I did a 23-minute CDP series, one of our older webinar series, where I set this up end to end with a Snowflake instance in 12 minutes. So going from Snowflake to Facebook in 12 minutes. That said, it's going to be a range. Our average user, it takes 23 to set up their first sync, in this case, like a Facebook or a TikTok. But really, it doesn't take long. The only caveat is if, hey, you are net new, you have to set up your event tracking, you don't have Snowflake set up, like, of course, then there's an implementation time of Snowflake. But if you have your data in a warehouse, then you are good to go and you can get it set up in under an hour. Cool. Who typically is the user who manages this? Another one of it depends. I think it really can be both. The data team is typically the one that would manage the pipelines if you didn't have this type of tool. So they're the ones used to doing it.
Mhm.
Although now this is a marketer friendly tool where business users can, right? So we have some companies where the data team hooks up Snowflake and the marketing team just goes, right? And they're able to just manage all their integrations on their own. They do everything on their own. There's also others where the data teams and the marketing teams just talk, and the marketers will say, hey, can you add this to my SQL query? And the data team might still own it. So it does depend, but the nice part is that it can be both. I think the biggest part to that, and Aaron, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on to this point, is the communication between data teams and marketing teams has become so essential as products like Snowflake and Hightouch have been adopted, where it gives you the user-friendly tools where marketers get access to the data. They just have to communicate. They have to know, hey, data team, what data points do we have, right? Facebook accepts XYZ. Do we have these? How do I get these, right? And just having that open communication.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the language of social media is so foreign to so many of the data partners that we work with, right? And so it's like the team having them understand the business needs. And then obviously, right, what that means from a data perspective is like, this is what I can and cannot do. And this is the data we have and why we have it. And so to your point, right, the closer those teams sit together, right, the better, right, that the flow is going to happen.
Exactly. Organizationally, how do we get started? Any
Mm.
recommendations?
Put your data
So,
in Snowflake.
yeah, I was gonna say, Aaron, do you want to take this first? You go with the first step.
We get this question a lot, and it's just a huge shift. And again, I work with both marketers and agencies, so it kind of depends on kind of where we're all sitting in kind of the ecosystem. It goes back to the one we talked about just right before, right? So a lot of times what's happening, we're seeing in marketing organizations is dedicated marketing IT. So some people call it shadow IT. I hate that term. But I do think it's important that within the marketing and CMO org, you have people that are understanding what is the data I need in Snowflake specific for this use case, right? Because Snowflake sits inside of supply chain management, financial services, like deep inside of organizations, right? So if you can have dedicated headcount that is specifically supporting your marketing, paid advertising, paid teams, that's ideal, right? Because they have the skill sets, they're going to understand the business. To your point, it's going to help communication. Now, a lot of times what's happening is that your agencies are hands on keyboard, and then you have the brand, right, that is actually the one with the data. So that's getting really interesting, right? How do you have an agency that's close to the brand so that they can make sure they're getting the data to the platforms, right? So there's that communication flow as well. And so that's really relationship between your ad agency, right, and the brand, right, coming together and being very close in synergy on the activation of those campaigns. Because that your agency is only as good as the data you're going to provide them as a marketer, right? So that becomes, right, again, it goes back so much to communication, but also organization of your talent.
Exactly, 100%. And then a bit more tactically getting started. Like once you have that in Snowflake, once you understand the data that you have, getting started with Hightouch is very easy. Your first sync is actually free. So testing this out and saying, hey, I want to just send it down into Facebook couldn't be easier. And we'll provide some links for you all and resources and guidance on how to get started. I'll also walk through a demo here in a second for anyone who wants to stick around and check out what it actually looks like in the UI. Cool. Well, that's everything we have today, other than the demo. Aaron, thank you so much. That was a blast. Very much looking forward to our next one of these, and hope everyone learned a ton. For anyone who wants to stick around again, I'm going to hop into a demo here in a second.
Thanks, Alec. Bye, guys.
So before we jump into Hightouch to actually demo, just a couple of core concepts I want to make sure everyone understands. There's four main ones in Hightouch: a source, a model, a sink, and a destination. A source is going to be where we're pulling data from, in this case, Snowflake. A destination is going to be where we're pushing data to, in this case, for the demo, Facebook Conversion API. Now, sitting in between those, you have two concepts, one of which is a model, where you tell Hightouch what data to look at. The other is then the sink. And the sink is where you're actually defining the mapping between the source and the destination. So saying, hey, map email to email, first name to first name, last name to last name, etc., as well as setting your sync settings like how often you want us to sync that data over. Now, keep in mind that one model can have many syncs to many destinations as well. So your data team may only need to create one conversion model for you, while you can then use many syncs from that one model to each of your destinations. It looks a little bit more complex than it is. All you're saying is tell Hightouch what data to look at, sync this data to each of your many destinations, or have many syncs to one individual destination. It's really up to you of how you want to handle this. So jumping into Hightouch, one thing I quickly wanted to clarify is that we really have two main activation UIs. The first is Customer Studio, and this is all of our marketer-friendly, no-code audience and experimentation builders. You can do things like build audiences, see breakdowns of those audiences, use them in experiments, get some analytics back. And when you tie that with our new offerings of our Customer 360 Toolkit or Snowflake native identity resolution, it really gives you this composable CDP or customer data platform that's built directly on top of Snowflake. This UI is super powerful. We are super excited about it, but this is not what we're going to be walking through today. Rather, this conversion API use case is powered by our more typical reverse ETL, our first product offering, which is really SQL friendly, and we'll walk through that in a second here. So the first step is going and clicking over into sources. So in this case, our source, which is Snowflake, has already been configured by either adding a couple of our different keys or doing that through Snowflake Partner Connect. Our destinations, all of our different ad platforms or our conversion APIs have already been configured as well by adding in our Pixel ID. Both of those are one-time setups, and once they're created, we're good to go and can use them in perpetuity. So now we're going to go and create our model. And this is really the fun part where you can have some flexibility into what exactly you want to pull out of Snowflake. So in this case, we're going to use SQL, and we're going to go ahead and write a SQL statement where we're looking at all of our events. So select star from public.events and joining our user information onto that event table. Now, what that actually looks like is every single one of our rows has a unique message ID with our event name of checkout started, order refunded, order completed, etc., along with the relevant product information. Now, next to that, because we joined our user information, you can see our dummy user information of first name, last name, and email address, which will be used to drive up match rates in Facebook, are now being added to these rows as well. If I wanted to additionally join on some maybe data science models or any other tables where I might have user information, I can do that very easily here. But for this case, let's keep things simple and just use the data that's currently on the screen. So we're going to hit save, and our model has been created. Now, in this case, we're going to take a look at an existing Facebook conversion API sync where you can see exactly how we're handling the mapping inside of Hightouch to go from Snowflake down into Facebook. So we're going to look at a column called event name and pass that as the event name, though we could add in some custom information here if we wanted to mess around with any synthetic conversion events. You can force an event name. Now, the column containing timestamp, you're going to just simply pick the timestamp of the event, though for this case, it's demo data, so we're just going to leave it blank, and Facebook will use the time at which it shows up. And here's really where we're talking about event enrichment. So this is where we're saying, hey, take these columns out of Snowflake of all of our different personal identifiers or product information like price, category, product ID, and add them to the sync and map them in this way to Facebook. So, hey, map email to user_data.em. That's how Facebook accepts email, right? Same thing with first name, last name, value, category, content IDs. Now you can think like as you go to add more and more syncs here, each of these different platforms, as we talked to before, are going to accept different fields and different formats. And that's the beauty of this mapper, is that you can simply take one of your models and map it to all of your different destinations and how they handle it on this right-hand side. Additionally, we've built out pretty in-depth destination settings. So any of our different settings, you can do certain actions like add an action source or pass an event code or actually do the hashing for PII. Really depends on the destination and what they support, the different custom settings here. But you can see how easy that is to just add some additional powerful settings onto it. Now, you can additionally go and actually test an event. So if you wanted to test a certain row to see what this would look like, you just simply click test. I can look into here and actually pull a given event and say, hey, show me what this would look like if I sent it. So let's pull that. Cool. And I would hit sync as added row. Now, this is probably going to fail just because I've already sent that message ID. But just so you can get it. Oh, actually, you know what? It went through. Cool. I have not sent that message ID. So we're actually good to go. And you can see how this actually passes down into Facebook. So we have the action source, the event name, content category, content ID, value, and then all of this additional user data. Remember in the webinar when we were talking about the actual payload, you can see it here in what's actually being sent down. Cool. So we're going to hit close. And we'll go into schedule. Schedule is where you tell Hightouch how often you want us to actually go and send this information. So you can do that on a custom recurrence. You can say do it one time. In this case, I said once per hour, but you can get down to every 15 minutes, every 10 minutes, really whatever you need, and however often your data is making it into Snowflake and you want to send it out. Now, we also give full visibility into any errors that are occurring, and you can really see in the sync details what's going on. So in this case, I haven't redacted any of these columns, so anyone can come in, but if your data team doesn't want to show PII, you can hide them. But I can come in and really just click each of these and get some information about each of the rows that are being sent. So full visibility into all of these requests being sent down. So hopping back over to models, we could simply come into here and add another sync, whether that's to Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, whatever it may be. So we can use that same exact model. And maybe we want to add a test event, right, to send to Facebook. And we want to call this test event _ synthetic, because our team wants to try potentially sending a different type of enrichment or a different type of LTV model. So let's use test _ event synthetic. And let's actually try to send over now email as email. I'm going to skip adding the other identifiers just for the sake of this demo. But let's use the column that we wanted to send as lifetime value. And now let's send it over enriched as predicted LTV. Cool. Action source, we can just set as website. We're not going to do anything there. We can hit continue. LTV _ synthetic. You can set a custom recurrence. Actually, let's do an interval in this case. Let's just do 1 hour. Hit finish. Hit run. And now this is actually going to go in and run and send those events with that little bit of transformation that I added of now it's sending as _test _ synthetic conversion, right? So you can start to get the hint here that we get a lot of flexibility to go and test new things, right? Whether that's a net new event, a net new destination, or a net new enrichment. It's really, really easy to just take that existing model, add the existing columns that you want to add, and map it down into Facebook. So now Facebook, inside of Facebook, I will have these different events all sending down on my automated schedule. I'll hop back to the model so you can see all of them. I'll have these two syncs being sent down and actually making sure that all the data is making it there in an enriched fashion. So my Facebook account now has enriched conversions that I can use for optimization or whatever other purposes that I want to inside of the Facebook account. All right, hopping back. I know we went through a lot today. I really appreciate everyone sticking around until the end here. Please, please, please feel free to add any questions that you might have in the comments. Reach out to our team. You can check out hightouch.com. Our team is very quick and is eager to hear about all of your feedback. Thank you all for joining, and I hope you all learned a lot about conversion APIs as well as Hightouch and Snowflake and how the two come together to really power this new age of digital advertising. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great one.